Breeding in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sucks, and I am sick of everyone telling me that it's better for shiny hunting or that it's fine because you don't need to breed at all for competitive Pokemon anymore. Both of these things are false, and I'm going to prove it to you today in this video. But first, we need to talk about how breeding worked in the older games and what about it Scarlet and Violet changed. In previous Pokemon games, there was either a Pokemon daycare or a Pokemon nursery, and you could put up to 2 Pokemon in them. If the Pokemon were compatible to produce an egg, the person outside the daycare would inform you of how likely they were to breed, if at all. Then, as you walked around, the game would check every 256 steps to see if the game produced an egg. If an egg was generated, the person outside the daycare would change their pose and you could take the egg from them. And then the egg would get added directly to your party. Starting in Black and White 2, you can get a key item known as the Oval Charm, which drastically increases the likelihood an egg is produced, no matter how compatible the parents are. As for hatching the eggs, every 255, 256, or 257 steps, depending on the generation you're playing, the game lowers an internal counter known as the egg cycle by 1, and when this hits 0, the egg hatches. The amount of egg cycles you have to complete is based on Pokemon species and can be modified in a few different ways. The most classic way is a Pokemon with the Flame Body, Magma Armor, or Steam Engine abilities. They all reduce the egg cycle by 2 every time the 255 steps are completed, instead of 1. In addition, starting in Gen 5 and continuing through Gen 7, there were various pass powers to speed up egg hatching. This is either the pass powers from Gen 5, the O powers from Gen 6, or the Roto Lotto in Gen 7, the strongest version of which could halve the amount of time it takes to hatch an egg. But what is the point of breeding? Well, it used to be the easiest way to get Pokemon for competitive matches. Parents passed down their stats and natures, like genetics, so you could chain down good stats over and over, gradually increasing the stats of new eggs until you have a perfect Pokemon several generations later. In addition, hatching a lot of eggs is a popular way to shiny hunt. You get increased shiny chances if you use 2 Pokemon with different language origins, and sometimes this is the only way to hunt for a specific Pokemon, like starters, which have been shiny locked in recent generations. Okay, so how did this chain breeding work? Well, for competitive Pokemon, the typical process for breeding is to put 2 Pokemon in the daycare and empty all the Pokemon in your party except for a Pokemon with Flame Body. Then, run around outside the daycare and start receiving eggs. This both generates new eggs and hatches old ones at the same time. You can check what eggs you get as they hatch, and if one hatches with superior stats to one of your parents, you can swap that parent out for the egg, increasing the likelihood better stats appear on the next batch of eggs. If the egg hatched isn't good, you could just release it or wonder trade it and then continue breeding. For shiny hunting, this works exactly the same, except you don't swap the parents out. You just check if an egg is shiny, if not, release or trade it. Now for the big changes that Scarlet and Violet made to this formula. For one, they removed the daycare or nursery, and breeding is all done in the picnic feature. So now you can breed anywhere you want, including immediately at the start of a game. Now how it works is that when you picnic, if you have at least 2 compatible Pokemon in your party, they have a chance to produce an egg, and the egg will spawn inside the picnic basket. Up to 10 eggs can spawn in the basket this way. Instead of using a step count to check if an egg will spawn, the condition is now time. You just have to wait. In addition, eggs now go directly to the PC boxes. The egg charm has been removed, but they kept the powers in the form of sandwich buffs. This goes from level 1 egg power all the way to level 3 egg power. Although the level 3 egg power requires the rare Herba Mystica items, so it's typically not worth it to go that far. Instead, we do the egg power level 2, which increases both the egg generation and the egg hatching speed. For hatching, a lot of people seem to think that Flame Body and other abilities had their functionality removed, but they weren't and worked just fine. So hatching works the same as before effectively. The changes may seem small and even good, but they ruined the flow state of breeding, making the entire process less enjoyable, slower, and somehow even less interactive than it was before. My first major gripe is that without the egg power, the amount of time it can take to get one single egg is absurd. In this clip, it took me 14 minutes and 54 seconds to get one egg, and then another 1 minute and 20 seconds to hatch it. This is too slow. The entire breeding function is neutered if you don't know about or don't have the ingredients for sandwiches. Let's compare this to Emerald, a game without any fancy buffs like the sandwiches or O powers or the egg charm. Here, it took me 3 minutes to get and hatch an egg with the same step count and compatibility as the egg I bred in Scarlet. Again, this is without the egg charm or egg power buffs existing. My only help here was Magma Armor. This is completely unacceptable. I get it. It can be improved with sandwiches. But in the instance of me needing 1 egg, I still have to make and then effectively waste a 30-minute sandwich buff. It's ridiculous and poorly designed. Why is there even waiting? Why don't eggs just instantly spawn every time you talk to the basket? And what if you don't even know about sandwiches or how they work? And honestly, how are you even to know about breeding at the picnic? This leads me into my second complaint, a lack of information provided to the player. Without a person outside the daycare, you cannot know the parent Pokemon's compatibility or when eggs are ready. You just have to wait and hope. This leads to you setting up a picnic, making the sandwich, and then putting the game down and doing something else. On top of this, you can't check how much time you have left on your sandwich buff while you're in a picnic, so it can run out without you knowing or noticing. This leads to players having to go online to learn about basic information for the game, something I always think is bad. Pokemon has never been great at teaching its players how its mechanics work, but the daycare was one of the very few things that actually concisely communicated important information to you, and they took it away. Now, a lot of people, especially shiny hunters, seem to think that this new system is better because you waste less time actually playing the game doing pointless activities. Allow me to respectfully disagree with my third complaint. Eggs going into the PC fundamentally breaks the old flow that breeding used to have and contributes to significant slowdown within the breeding process, be it for shiny hunting or competitive. Eggs go into the PC, but you cannot take them out unless you close the picnic down. This removes the ability to run around for new eggs and hatch old eggs at the same time. So while it might seem nice to breed a box of 30 eggs and hatch all of them while running around, you are wasting a considerable amount of time by not being able to multitask within the game itself. Imagine if you bred 30 eggs while breeding for stats, and the best parent hatched on the second egg. You would now have to waste time hatching 28 eggs because you cannot release them while they're eggs. The same goes for shinies. Let's say you stockpiled 4 boxes of eggs and hatched a shiny on the second box. Now you have to hatch the rest of the eggs anyway, and this wastes a bunch of time that you wouldn't have had to waste if you could hatch and breed them at the same time. What's the big deal anyway, I hear the straw man ask me. Breeding isn't even necessary anymore. Yeah, it sucks that shiny hunters got it a bit worse, but it's not that bad. And for competitive breeding, well, they made that entirely unnecessary. Bottle caps and nature mints are really affordable now at 20k each. And you only need to do 1 Academy tournament with Gold Dengo to afford 5 bottle caps and a mint to make a Pokemon perfect and battle ready. Well, Mr. Strawman, in the hyper-optimized world of competitive Pokemon, there are instances where you want a stat to be the lowest possible value instead of the highest. The 2 most common occurrences for this are Trick Room and Foul Play. Trick Room is a field move that makes a Pokemon with the lower speed stat move first. This is a very common strategy in VGC, and Pokemon often make their speed stat 0 if they can help it. Foul Play is the other strategy, and it is a physical attack that deals damage against the target using their own attack stat. So Pokemon who fight using only special attacks make sure their regular attack stat is the lowest value that it can be. This also lowers the damage they take from hurting themselves in confusion, which can come into play sometimes. If you look at any competitive team from the last 10 years, you'll see every competitive player running a 0 attack on special attackers and 0 speed for Trick Room users. This is not some niche thing that players don't use. It is required. Over the years, we have gotten a lot of things that improve Pokemon acquisition, such as hyper training, a feature that lets you trade rare items known as bottle caps to a person who, in exchange, will make a Pokemon stats the highest value, regardless of what it was before. But there is still no feature to lower a Pokemon stat to 0 or any other value in the same way. While you could encounter wild Pokemon repeatedly to get a 0 speed or attack, it's not fast to do that, and it's very luck reliant. So most people choose to breed a Pokemon with a 0 attack or 0 speed Ditto, or both in the case of a slow Trick Room special attacker. This way you only have to farm for the stat once on Ditto, and then you can guarantee it passes down with 100% certainty using some breeding items. Because of this, you are forced to interact with these garbage breeding mechanics, and it really slows everything down. The first time I built a team, I bred everything using a perfect Ditto and a 0 speed Ditto I farmed, and I didn't use bottle caps or mints at all. Everyone told me I was wasting time breeding, and I should have just bred the speed stat down and fixed up Pokemon with bottle caps and mints later on. But is that any faster than breeding? And if it is it faster than it used to be in Sword and Shield? So what I want to do is compare the time it takes to breed a 0 speed Pokemon in Sword and Shield with perfect stats to the time it takes me to breed one in Scarlet and then fix it up with items afterwards. I'll also compare these 2 speeds to the time it took me to breed competitive Pokemon without caps and mints in Scarlet during that team building video as well. The goal here is not to get a fully competitive Pokemon, but just a Pokemon with perfect stats and the right nature. I will not count the time it takes to get a proper breeding Ditto or the items you need to breed in either of these games. That's not part of the point of this. Our target Pokemon is going to be a 0 speed Pawniard with a brave nature and perfect HP, attack, defense, and special defense. In Sword and Shield, I'm going to breed until all of these stats are perfect with the right nature and ability. In Scarlet, I'll be breeding until I've got a 0 speed stat with the right ability, and then I'll see how long it takes to acquire the items to fix its stats and nature later on. Since I can't remove money from my Pokemon Scarlet game, I'll just do the Academy tournament until I've got 100k in additional funds, which is how much 4 bottle caps and a mint costs. Then, I'll farm raids for enough EXP candy to get Pawniard to level 50 so it can be bottle capped. I'll count the candies I get from raids and use an EXP candy calculator to make sure I waste as little time collecting them as possible. Lastly, the parents for both Sword and Shield and for Scarlet and Violet will be from raids. So in addition to the Dittos I am using, Bisharp will each have a few perfect stats already, which will speed things up in both games. We'll start with Shield. The first parents I use are a Bisharp I have that's got perfect HP, attack, and defense, along with the proper ability. I give it the Destiny Knot, which increases the chances that its stats get passed down. And then I also have a Brave Ditto that I give an Everstone to, which will pass down Ditto's nature. I produce exactly 1 egg, and now I've got a Pawniard with 2 perfect IVs and a brave nature. That took me 1 minute and 50 seconds. After that, I pair this new Pawniard with a 5 IV Ditto I have that also has a 0 in speed, and I put the Destiny Knot on Ditto and an Everstone on my brave Pawniard. Now I just swap breed until I'm done. The moment I'd get a Pawniard with 1 more IV than the current parent, I would swap it out as the new parent. After 16 minutes and 37 seconds of this, I have my 4 IV 0 speed brave Pawniard. Okay, so now let's see what it would take to do this in Scarlet using bottle caps, mints, and just 1 breed for the 0 speed. The first thing I do in Scarlet is farm for EXP candies. I opt to solo raids for this, so I have to be a bit picky with what raids I can defeat. But after about 11 minutes, I found and defeated 2 raids, which gave me enough candy to get Pawniard to level 50, which it needs to be if it wants to hyper train. At this point, I make a sandwich and start waiting for eggs. The way this is done is by putting a Bisharp I have with 4 perfect stats in my party with a 0 speed Ditto I have. Bisharp holds the Destiny Knot, which guarantees 5 of the collective stats of the parents passed down, and Ditto holds the Power Anklet, which forces the speed stat of Ditto to be passed down. Despite not aiming for perfect stats overall from this breed, the more random ones I end up with means the less money and bottle caps I have to spend after I do the farming for them. Anyway, here's where the problems start. I get 1 egg and hatch it, and whoops, it's got the wrong ability. This is a bit unlucky because I had a 60% chance to get the proper ability, but this happens to me 3 more times. The thing is, all of this is taking extra time because I have to close the picnic down once I generate a single egg. I don't want to generate like 6 eggs because that could also potentially waste more time just waiting around and doing nothing. This is a lose-lose scenario to me. Either I waste time generating eggs I potentially don't need, or I waste time hatching 1 egg at a time, opening and closing the picnic over and over again. But after 13 minutes of breeding, I finally have my 0 speed Pawniard with the right ability. So now we just have to fix its stats and nature up. First, I level it to 50 using the EXP candies I got, and then I head to the Academy tournament to farm money. This is the best place to farm money in the entire game. I just have to spam Make It Ring as much as I can with Goldingo while it holds the amulet coin to increase the amount of money I get when I win battles. This took me about 18 minutes. Let that sink in. 18 minutes. It took longer to do 1 Academy tournament than it took to breed a perfect Pokemon in Shield version. After that, I stop at Chansey Supply to buy a Bravement and then Delibird's presents for the 3 bottle caps I need. Then it's just a quick trip to Montevideo to talk to the Hypertrain guy, and we're done at 47 minutes. Not only is this significantly slower than it was in Shield, it's not even faster than breeding in this game like everyone said it would be. In my team building video for Scarlet, Makuhita took 40 minutes, Lilligant took 45, and Torkoal took 52. The only one who took significantly longer than this process was my Urengaru, who took like 2.5 hours because of me getting unlucky. But I think you can see the typical average of a breed is going to be about the same as breeding 1 Pokemon and fixing it up with caps and mints later on. Now, it's true that on Pokemon who want both max attack and max speed, that they could just be caught in the wild and fixed with caps, which will be a lot faster. But I'd argue that the amount of Pokemon you still need to breed is plentiful. It's going to be every Trick Room attacker and every special attacker who doesn't run physical attack at all. This is a lot of Pokemon. As an example, of the top 10 VGC Series 1 Pokemon according to Pikalytics, Goldingo, Amoonguss, Armarouge, Hydreigon, and Indeedee Female all want to run 0 attack or speed, or in some cases, both. This is half of the top 10. This is not something you can avoid doing at the highest level of play. You will have to deal with this garbage, annoying, and unfun breeding system if you want to compete. I don't know why they fixed something that was not broken. All they'd have to do to fix this system is make it so the game gives you an egg every time you talk to the basket, and then have the egg go directly to your party and let you ride Koraidon in a picnic so you can hatch eggs while breeding. Yeah, you'd be running in circles, but that's all breeding ever was anyway. And don't even get me started on changing their Terra types.